EAP, Occupational Interest Group. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it and having the confidence, for this venture and to, take a chance. And I really, really appreciate it. I'm Dale Massey, the project coordinator, and I want to introduce you to two of my associates. Dennis is behind me. Dennis, there's Dennis Baker. He's right. And Dennis is an associate as well as Peter.
Hello.
Peter.
Hello,
And here's
guys.
Peter.
Hello. Hello.
Peter is our IT person. So if you have any difficulties, believe me, he's our backup. All right. Can we have the first slide? Work is, I wanted to, I thought,
You want the first slide?
yeah, this one. I just want to put this up. People usually start with a joke, but no, I want this one. But I wanted to start with a quote from Tolstoy. Work is a necessary condition for happiness. Now the next one. I just love that. I thought that, for all of us in the workplace, I thought that had such, relevance, really. All right, I'm going to show you the agenda. I sent the agenda out. I don't know how many of you got it or looked at it, but this is what we will be doing. I want to give you the background and the rationale for why I started this and the history with IFSW and who we all are. I'm going to go over all that. And then, of course, our Secretary-General, Dr. Truell, who is on, is going to be our guest speaker. And then I want to talk about future plans, and we'll have questions and answers. So please submit your questions. And when you submit your questions, you want to tell me, Peter, how are we going to,
you guys want to submit it through chat?
Through chat? Okay, will you submit questions through chat? And when you submit, would you please have, beside your name, the title of your work organization, as well as what country you are from? All right? Okay, Peter?
Yeah.
Let's get back to the rest of it. Okay, let's go back then. Okay?
So we don't want to share this anymore?
No, that's all. The agenda, all right, now we're going to go to the all right, now we're up to the, just 1 second. Peter, four. Excuse me. All right, I want to give you the background and the rationale for how this all came into being. Let me say that I have had a strong personal interest in the international. And loved it. I'm a Fulbright scholar and specialist, and the State Department sent me to many countries, and I consulted in a lot of countries. I also have lived in Europe for 5 years as a military spouse in England and in Italy. So I really have had this international strong interest. I have some professional concerns, as well as as the personal, as I mentioned. I see that for example, with EAPs, I taught the EAP online school for 12 years and with the University of Maryland. And I had students from 38 countries and every continent except Antarctica, but there was no group representing them. So I was always concerned about that, and I felt badly because I had students, as I say, from so many countries. The other group that I have long been associated with and familiar with is the occupational social workers and others in the field that are working that might not be social workers, might have a master's in counseling, might have a master's in psychology or bachelor's, but they would be working in different jobs like human resources, a variety of different jobs. And I knew that these two groups operated separately. And I also felt that, the occupational group actually has a longer history in the workplace than employee assistance programs. Macy's department store started a program in 1910, and Siemens in Germany has had, social workers for 75 years. So there was a group called ENOS, the European Network of Occupational Social Workers, and that no longer exists. And the third area that is my own NASW, the National Association of Social Workers, it has many interest groups, but it has no group for occupational. So I just felt, that I really kind of wanted to pull this together. And I saw the purpose as far as having a network that we all, what are we all doing? And where are we? And I saw it as an exchange of information back and forth. And the third, I really wanted to see more of a commitment to social justice. And I wanted to see it through the workplace dimension and our responsibility in the workplace. I'm concerned somewhat about my own area of EAPs with such a concentration on profit and maybe for profit and pricing rather than actually, having some kind of also a little bit of altruism to say the least. So I thought all about this with the two groups and felt, that I wanted to see, and I got this idea knowing of IFSW. I have been a member and a friend for years of IFSW and actually attended several international conferences years ago. It seemed to me that IFSW in many ways was the ideal place for our group. They have a professional commitment to values, to social justice, and the underserved populations. So I wrote to Dr. Truell, and I have not met him personally, though I knew his predecessor, and actually have visited IFSW, believe it or not, Rory, in Switzerland in your offices. So I suggested this group. I said, would you be interested if we formed an interest group around the workplace? Within 24 hours, I got a response. He said, go for it. And I thought, oh my, now what? He also assigned Lola Casal from his staff to work with me. So, and we have been back and forth as well as though with our, Rory. So what was I going to do? So let me just tell you what I've done and how I've started growing our group. It's been probably 6 to 8 months that I've been recruiting from various networks that I'm associated with, and certainly, like LinkedIn and the EAP field, and, started an NASW, started reaching out. I need your help. I really do need your help because we want to grow, but you all have various networks, and I really, really would appreciate that. You can send the invite, the invite letter if you need it again. We'll send it, but please, help us because between Dennis and I, here we are with our group. I welcome your suggestions. Any thoughts you have about this? We will discuss all of this. We're going to have, I hope we have a fairly extensive question and answer period so we can have exchanges and ideas. So, none of this is cast in any kind of concrete, and, this is really where we are. And remember that members I mean, it's so easy to be a friend of IFSW. As you know, it's only $50. And, you know, and then that becomes our, you know, our identity. So at this point, we have well over 50 members. We have 17 countries, and this is who we are, outside of the United States, including Palestine, New Zealand, Ireland, Nigeria, Mongolia, Netherlands, Guinea, France, Russia. So, I mean, that gives us some idea. It reminded me so much of when I did the online school, of people are all over the world working in the workplace, and we need some connection. So what I anticipate, and we'll talk about this in future as far as which way and directions, is to have maybe every 3, 4 months, have quarterly, have Zoom meetings. And what I thought we might start with having several of you, and I'll select them by knowing what your positions are, to make sure that we have diversity, balance, some from EAPs, some from other areas, some from US, some from not from US, and you know, have you all present on what your work is and what you're doing. In that way, I think we can begin, you know, to get to know each other and see where we are and what directions, you know, we might want to go in. I also thought we could share relevant information with each other. Now, with that, I'm ask you, you can send me information if you want to share with the group, but please limit it if you can to 1 page, because, you know, you know, Dennis will be distributing this, and we can't handle, you know, lots and lots of, but, you know, if you can summarize in 1 good page, you know, what information you want to share or what you want to tell people. The other thing is, I think we really appreciate is alerting me if there's something going on that you think, you know, we should be aware of, that we should notice, or that you're involved with, or a certain specific kind of meeting, anything like that. If you could, you know, let me know, we'll just, you know, try to pass that on, you know, as best we can. So what I'm going to do is, as I say, after we hear from Dr. Truell, then we'll go back for the suggestions, and we'll go back for the questions and answers. So that's where we are as far as, you know, my role and what I'm doing here. And again, I want to thank you for having the confidence in this. Well, now for our main feature. At this point, I want to introduce now our Secretary-General, Rory Truell. Rory is the Secretary-General of IFSW, as you know, which is the global body representing professional social work practice, comprising 143 country level members and holding consultative status with the United Nations. Rory sent me this morning the list of United Nations organizations they're affiliated with. So I'm sure he's going to go over those with you so you'll know. I think that opens up a whole world to us, at least in several of them I'm embarrassed to say, had not heard of. Dr. Truell works worldwide with government leaders, national associations, frontline services, and international development agencies, which I'm sure that's what we want to hear a lot about, to co-develop cooperation and partnerships with communities and populations for sustainable development and social transformation. You see why that dimension, I think, is so important for us in the workplace. Dr. Truell is an honorary professor at Essex University and a visiting professor or keynote speaker in many institutions globally. He regularly writes on international social work practice examples in The Guardian. With that, I'm going to turn this over now to Dr. Truell. Rory?
Oh, thank you so much, and it's lovely to see everybody. Some very familiar faces and colleagues from many years, and some new faces and new people I'm very much looking forward to getting to know. Dale, thank you so much for organising us to come together. I've been learning quite a lot from Dale since she contacted me, and when she wrote to me to say, can you please make a presentation at this event today, I felt quite reluctant, because one of the challenges with working with IFSW is it's assumed that you know about every field of practice and social work, and I don't. And I have to acknowledge to all of you that I feel that I'm surrounded by people that know much more about employee assistance programs than I do. My background is in community work and mental health social work. And of course, we have between us many deep connections in the different fields of practice, but I haven't had the experiences that you have. And I'm very much here also to learn from you in the discussion, and any questions that you might have, and any advice that you might be able to give me in my role in IFSW. Can I just, before I go forward, I've got a few slides to show you, but can I just check, does anybody need to know a little bit more about IFSW, or is everybody familiar with it? And if you're not familiar with it and you put your hand up, that's wonderful from my perspective. Okay, we have someone that has their hand up.
Numbers are not familiar with it.
Yeah, so IFSW stands for the International Federation of Social Workers, and we have quite a few people here today that have played very prominent leading roles. We have Gary Bailey, who was a past president of IFSW. We have Elaine Congress, who's been a representative at the New York help me, Elaine, in various roles at the United Nations representing IFSW. Sorry, Elaine. And we have Ryder Mira from Palestine, who's on our Human Rights Commission. And we have Jacob from Nigeria, who's on our Ethics Commission. So we have others here as well. So we've got lots of IFSW people here. And the purpose of the International Federation of Social Workers is to support national associations of social work to be able to come together to create policies and standards for the profession worldwide. And so that means that the training that you might do and the work that the way that you might work in New York will be familiar to Nigeria, to Palestine, to Australia, to other countries. So we, in a sense, work to facilitate people to come together to form the glue of the global profession. And we also work to advocate from a social work perspective in a range of forums, just as all social workers do. We've got an ethical obligation in social work to challenge injustice and to support a more socially just world. And so IFSW does that in its global capacity and supports other people to do that in their national or regional capacities. So it's a fairly old institution. It was formed in 1928, and as Dale said, we comprise 143 national associations of social work. So that's a lot of social work voices to bring together to try and establish policies and understanding. And IFSW is one of the places which I think all of us in the profession can be very proud, because we're in almost all instances able to work together across our cultures, our languages, and drive the profession forward. Is that if there's any more questions about IFSW, we can pick those up in the questions and answers. I'm going to just share my screen and start my slideshow. I'm on a different computer today, so I just have to see where all the buttons are. Oops. Slideshow. So I'm assuming you can all see that.
Mhm.
As I said before, because I haven't worked in employment assistance programs, I thought, where do I start? What can I share? What knowledge do I have? And I thought what I'd do is I'd look in the IFSW archives, which is essentially our historic library. It's an institution that's kept good records on many, many subjects as social work has grown and unfolded across the world. And I had recalled seeing quite a lot of information in the past on industrial social work. And so I thought, well, in preparation for this, I'll have a little look. I'll see what I can find. And it was really interesting to go through some of this material. And so I just want to talk through some of the key findings that I was able to find, because these are, in a sense, our historic roots of personnel social work or industrial social work, or what we might now call employment assistance programs. And of course, many things changed in the 1800s in terms of social work, and social work came from, particularly in the West, a tradition of social reform, of people that weren't called social workers in those days because the profession didn't have that label until a bit later. But we can trace our history in the Western part of the world back to people advocating for social change, and that was around issues of democracy, access to education, children's rights, peace. The women's right to vote was a major issue for many of our forebears. Workers' rights, clean environments, and standards in health and social welfare, and advocacy for social welfare. So in the Western tradition of social work, there was many, many congresses around the world that were articulating the rights for those issues, and people at the forefront are arguing for them diplomatically, sometimes by protest, sometimes by trying to include leaders to come together to activate change. And the way I think of this is it's a period in our history of immense social reform, which social work played an enormous part of that. And up until the 1920s, we started to develop the title of social work, and it was the first international congress on social work was in 1928, and the leaders from these reform movements were present at that international congress. It was held in Paris in 1928, and believe it or not, it had 5,000 people from many countries from all the regions around the world that attended this event. And in 1928, it wasn't just simply going onto the internet and booking a plane ticket, of course. It involved, if you were coming from the United States, I think maybe a 3 or 4 week journey. Coming from Australia, it was a 10-week journey. Coming from Latin America or Africa, it was weeks and weeks and weeks in preparation. And 5,000 people came, which is absolutely huge. We've never actually since had a social work international conference that's comprised so many people, even though travel and movement is a lot more easy 90 and so many years later. So around that time also, for those of you that are in the United States, you'll be much more familiar with this than people like myself who's not in the United States. But we had the New Deal come through, which social workers were very active in supporting President Roosevelt in And of course, this was an immense movement and change of policy, which affected not just the United States, but many, many countries throughout the world. It was the growth of a new economic approach. And that was to ensure that people had work. And coming out of the Depression, that was where there were so many homeless people, there were so many people that were absolutely desperate. It was a key approach to welfare. But it wasn't just work. Looking through the IFSW archives, there's so many documentations about ensuring that work led to better welfare and better well-being for people. And it was recognised that work had a substantial role in people's lives, and the workplace also had a set of responsibilities that went with that to ensure the health and welfare of people. And so social workers were surrounding President Roosevelt in his leadership to activate this new deal or new set of deals. And then, of course, we had the Second World War in the late 1930s and early 1940s. And after that, there was a regrouping of social work internationally. And at that stage, there was also a huge emphasis from our profession on personal social work or industrial social work. It's got several names in the literature, and I think that very much depends on which country people come from. They use different terms. And I was really fortunate to find many, many reports from between 1956 and 1959, because IFSW at that stage commissioned a process globally to be able to look at how to support people in the workplace. And so they finished that report in 1959, and this paragraph I have on the screen in front of me is just a little snippet from the introduction, just to give a context. And it says, through industrialization and its consequences, rationalization, automation, urbanization, etc., life and relations between human beings have become more and more away from nature and have become more complicated. Personal social work has, in those countries where it started 60 to 25 years ago, developed from family social work and undertaken by employers concerned for the human being at work. So there was quite a broad analysis from social work at that time of the place of people, the changing circumstances of people, the movement away from nature, which is something we talk about now a lot, I think, in the profession. How nature is so key and important, not just in terms of the sustainability, but in terms of our mental health. And there was obviously recognition of this some decades ago in our previous generation. So it was a time when social work and many others around the world really identified the need for the growth of welfare services, but not only in the community, as they're so often focused now, but a sense of rebuilding society from the Second World War and recognizing that health and mental health is so connected to what happens in the workplace. We had a conference in 1956, and it was really interesting. I don't know if you can see my screen, but I just photocopied off the first 30 pages. This is just a copy of a book that was produced out of that conference, Industrialization and Social Work, and it's got written here Munich in Germany, 1956, where the conference was held. And there's just chapters and chapters and chapters. I'm not able to take the book out of the office because of the archives. The archivalist would kill me if I took anything out of the office, and I'm not in the office today. But it highlighted at that point in time, the changing social patterns, and especially the rapid process back then of people moving towards the cities and losing their community social structures, losing the organic systems that we have when we live in a stable community that our grandparents are from and beyond, where our aunties and our uncles and our cousins will look out for each other and support each other. And in a process of people moving rapidly out of those situations into cities, those informal but essential support systems, of course, disappear. So there was a great emphasis on the need to build services, and particularly the responsibility of workplaces to build services, because it was work that people moved to the city to get. The report also noticed, and I think this is just a point that I drew out of the report, there are many points, that they were concerned that in the workplace at that time, that there was a very hierarchical and authoritative workplace culture. And they noted how that hierarchical and authoritative workplace culture could develop patterns that were brought into the home and reinforcing a patriarchal culture or system in the home of the boss and the family, or of the manager or the owner or the chief and the worker. And so social workers at that time were grappling with those sorts of issues and thinking, how can we change workplace culture so that we don't reinforce patterns that have a negative consequence of people in the workers' homes and also in the community. Can I just check, am I going too fast, or is this a good speed?
Pardon me?
Okay, I can see about 3 people on the screen because I've got the PowerPoint in front of me, and all of you are saying it's okay, so I'll carry on. What happened afterwards? Well, actually, I don't know. I don't know much about what happened after 1956, but I know that Dale knows. And Dale was very kind to send me her book. And this is a history of employee assistance programs in the United States. And what happened in the United States had, at that point in social work, an enormous influence on what other countries learned, because social work was so strong and had such a prominent voice in social work at that time. It was one of the pioneering countries in terms of developing social work, that it was able to share that information quite broadly. And I, in preparation for this, I was so appreciative to you, Dale, for sending me this book. It's so interesting and comprehensive, and it talks about, for those of you who haven't read it, I got a great education from it. It talks about the role of managing problems like alcoholism in the workplace, which became a significant feature in many workplaces, and how the history of the employment assistance program changed and evolved through social issues that employers and employees were grappling with. But I'm not here to talk, because we've got Dale here. She can talk more about that if there's some questions for her in the questions and answers. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn to my last slide, and if I can. What's happened here? My computer's stuck. Interesting. Okay, well, I know what's on the next last slide, and so I'm actually going to stop sharing and we can see each other. The next slide says, where do we go? And so I'm skipping over origins, from starting with our origins of social work being a social reform movement, identifying the need for welfare systems, identifying the need for a sense of social justice in people's lives and equality in people's lives, identifying that it happens in a range of places, but one of the really important places was the workplace, and we had leaders advocating. We had leaders surrounding up themselves around the politicians with a vision that the workplace would be a centre of health and social health for people. And that's the way societies needed to be organised. And now we're probably at the next global phase of rethinking things like new deals, of new sets of values. The United Nations are having significant conversations with a number of international organisations, including IFSW, on how do we emerge out of this pandemic with a new set of values, a set of eco-social values that create sustainability and reduce inequality, that enable people to unlock their potential in life rather than feeling marginalised, a set of values that enable inclusivity. And so what I think we're going to see over the next year or two is more and more push for the concept of we need to discuss new global values in the same way that we did after the Depression in the 1930s and after the Second World War. And there hasn't been that conversation since. After the Second World War, we got the United Nations Charter for the Declaration of Human Rights. And now there's a sense of push much more around a global conversation for values that bind people together with responsibility and respect, but bind them together in a sustainable and ecological way with the earth. And why I think this is going to be quite prominent is that we have the Fridays for the Future movement, talking with the trade union movement, talking with our colleagues in the health sector, the doctors and the nurses, talking with us, talking with the United Nations, talking with community leaders. And these conversations are all leading to a set of summits over the next 2 years, where we hope that we'll be able to engage society in what do we want as we move forward? What does the younger generation want to inherit? And what do those values look like? So one of the questions I have for all of you who are much more expert in supporting people in the workplace, who've done much more thinking about how workplaces can be shaped to support people's health and social health and mental health, is what kind of messages should our national associations of social work, what sort of messages should IFSW be contributing to this conversation? I'm sure you've all done lots more thinking than I have on the enormously changing context of work. As we now in this pandemic, very many of us are working from home, and working hours are changing, employment conditions are changing rapidly. And so what are some of the key messages, as if we were the social reformers? As if we were taking the role that was passed to us back in the late 1800s, when they fought against slavery and the right for women to vote. In the early 30s, when they fought for peace, when they fought for new deals so that the better distribution of income, when they fought for civil rights, the legacy of social work. What should we be fighting for now? What we should be advocating for now in terms of welfare and well-being in the workplace? And I don't know the answers, but that's why I'm really happy to be here with you to help learn from this conversation. So that's the end of my talk, and I'm really happy to take any questions. Thank you.
All right. You want to tell me now how do we, all right. Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Truell.
These are the questions
All right.
from the chat.
Let's see what we can start with. We have a number of questions here. This one comes from Elaine Congress. How can we have, Rory, can we have a copy of your PowerPoints as I would like to read them more closely, especially about the role of social work in the workplace over the years.
Elaine, what I'll do is I'll see how many pages it is.
What was that?
18 page
You don't want
document.
to make copies of a whole book.
I've got an 18 page
maybe-
document. What I'll do is I'm going to scan it
Oh,
and I'm going to send it to Dale, and then she can send it to everybody or
Oh,
anybody
sure.
who asks. And this is the report in 1959.
Oh, I'd love to read
Four-year
it.
process. It's got a definition of personnel social work in it, and a lot about the history and the concerns that they had there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. And I don't
So
think that's an
Dale, I'll
extra
do that. I'll do that.
I really appreciate it.
Rory,
I
have
think
a-
it's important to send the link for the IFSW, Dr. Rory, for all.
For the website.
Your website, yes.
Yeah, I could do that.
Rory, you sent me today the list of United Nations organizations of which we are affiliated as IFSW. Can you kind of go over them and just briefly give us an idea? Because as I say, a couple of them I was not familiar with. The ones you're affiliated with?
So with the United Nations, we work with a lot of different United Nations organizations, and in different regions we work sometimes with different ones. Elaine will be able to give a much more comprehensive answer than I, because she's a representative directly to the United Nations in New York. But we've had partnership agreements and collaborations and co-work with the UNDP, the United Nations Development Programme, which is the program that is the funding organisation for development. The Office of the Human Rights Commissioner, which is the office that supports the International Declaration of Human Rights and ensures or reports on whether it's been adhered to or not.
Yeah.
We've worked over the years with UNAIDS, which is the organisation focused on HIV/AIDS and the elimination. And of course, social work is so important to HIV/AIDS and the pandemic and all of these issues, because very often governments at the beginning of the process think that it's a medical issue and they need a medical response, and they neglect the need for communities to be supported. And as we've seen in this pandemic, so the visibility of social work globally has gone really high, because governments came to realise that under lockdown conditions, people still need medications, people still need some therapeutic support, people still need interaction in their lives, general public need to help with their anxiety, and also the public need to become an actor in their own response. They're actually the key actor in a lockdown situation. And all of that requires social work, helping homeless people in those environments and so on. So that's an example of the work we learned and experienced with our work with HIV/AIDS, and we're able to rapidly move into an approach that was very helpful and successful in saving thousands of millions of lives with this pandemic. So it's an example of some of the work that we do with the UN agencies. And another agency that we're working very closely with at the moment is the United Nations Research Institute for Social Development. And they recognise social work as a key actor and a reference point for social development. As the United Nations have moved away, or in the process of moving away from an aid model to a development model, they've recognised the importance of social workers being facilitators and supporting communities, people and families and individuals to be able to help in leading their own development. So there's not a dependency, so that people can lead their own development. And in social work, it's often we call this empowerment. Yeah, so the person's empowered to be able to make decisions in their own lives. And that is an approach that the United Nations now recognises as fundamental to their work. And they recognise that this has been our bread and butter. This has been the work and the way that we've worked successfully across all the continents for 100 years. So, with the pandemic, with our work with the various United Nations agencies, it's been really wonderful to see the visibility of social work going up by multiple factors. Dale, are you on mute? Are you talking? Oh, no.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Sorry,
Yep.
excuse me. We have a question here from Arad from Russia, and he wants to know, what can we do, those of us working in the workplace, for the new society with the post-endemic that you would recommend?
Well, we have a question and answer session for all of us, and I would really like to draw the wisdom out of the people that know more about working in the workplace and bringing social work concepts to the workplace to answer that than I have, if you allow me that.
Sure. Anybody else want to participate or make a suggestions from the group? Oh my. Well, I know that one of my concerns is why I started all this, as I said, was I was getting increasingly concerned about the role of employee assistance and seeing this emphasis on competition and price rather than maybe even having, the other thing I was seeing is, and I don't know if the rest of you have seen this, are people moving away from the workplace, professionals not working in the workplace, but actually setting up private offices separate from the workplace, doing outpatient mental health. And they really were not connecting anymore with managers, with supervisors, things that, you know, as far as we really can bring about change if we're in the workplace. And you know, that's really a major reason that I've become concerned about what's happening, at least in the US. I don't know if the rest of you are seeing this, but I'm almost seeing the EAP field turned into outpatient mental health in social work rather than, you know, what our original, you know, history goes with. We're in the workplace. Occupational social work has always been in the workplace. I mean, their positions are such, you know, that they're different type of jobs if you're human resources and if you're doing other things. So I'd like to hear from more of you that are not necessarily in the EAP field too, as well as what thoughts and suggestions you have in that area. And what about any others? Do you want to respond to what the thoughts might be as we come out of this pandemic and move into the future, what roles and what we should be thinking about?
May I respond? Yeah, I mean, really, Dale, I really agree with what's happened. Post-pandemic, it's not like everyone's going to be returning to offices. They're not. I mean, you look at there, all these empty, almost empty office buildings here in New York City, even as the pandemic fortunately seems to be ending. A lot of people really like working from home, and because of technology, it's more possible. But what does this mean in terms of EAP? What does it mean in terms of, you know, of ethics? It also really calls up division between, you know, people who have and can work from home and people who are not, and who has to go in, who will be in an office, and how can you have fair, equitable policies? So I just think social work and the kind of the occupational EAP field, I mean, maybe we have to really kind of rethink and about dealing with this kind of, I guess, brave new world, or this really changed world because of technology, and and maybe kind of new ways of thinking about the workplace that really emerged really because of the pandemic. It's made us just more aware of its possibilities to changing the workplace.
Any others want to comment? What are your thoughts about as we return or not return to the workplace? I mean, it's a tremendous implications for families. If people are going to be working at home, tremendous implications, not only for families, but for children. What is this going to mean? And of course, the role of women. I mean, it's got incredible implications there. So, I mean, are we ready? I mean, as a group, as professionals, are we really ready to get into the workplace and help the workplace with this? I mean, how are they going to deal with this, with all of the problems and issues? So it's such an important time, it seems to me, where the workplace is going to change a lot, and it is changing. But where are we, and where are we as human resource people in there, ready to be, of assistance? So thoughts that you have in this, I think, I would encourage all of you to start writing too about it, publishing about it. What are we doing? How can we really, be of assistance for this, tremendous change that's going to take place? And are we ready for the psychological effects of this on people? These are really, I think the time is now for us to really put all our heads together. That's why I love the fact that we're such a mixed group from, different areas in the workplace, not just the EAP field, where, we really ought to put our heads together and, with Rory thinking about this. I have something here from Jody Fry. Let's see, professor at the University of Maryland. She has mentioned something about the historical archive, about IFSW. Jody, are you still on? Maybe, what? Jody is not on. Maybe Pat would want to talk about, she said she's very interested in what you have as far as for their archive, which is at the University of Maryland. Do you want to address that, Pat?
Yeah, I'd love to, Dale. Thank you. Unfortunately, Jody had to run to another meeting at 1. She apologized. But this is a wonderful meeting and totally up our alley. Rory, your history was fascinating to us, and we were listening and taking notes, but we would, if possible, we would love access to that 1959 report. We have, Jody and I developed an archive back in 2013, and ours it's an international archive of employee assistance programs. And we've developed it for the last 8 years. We have over 70,000 downloads, people from all around the world. South Africa is a big contributor, Japan. So some of you, there's somebody from Ireland here. Hi, that's my folks in Ireland. There's folks from Ireland and England in there. And we would love all of you to, maybe Dale can send out some information about this to all of you, because we would love to hear from all of you. If you have any information about both historical information, which is kind of my bailiwick, and current information, which is more Jody's really on top of that. We really, in the United States, and Dale, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have a conflict going on between what she's alluded to in terms of the pricing people who are trying to just make a lot of money and doing quick things for people and just sending them right into therapy, versus our traditional EAP, where we really work with managers and supervisors and policy people in the workplace, and we need to support those folks who are currently doing it and expand it, at least here in the US and Canada. I don't know about globally if that's an issue, but thanks, Dale, for letting me talk a little bit about our archive.
That's all right. And Pat is a nurse.
Yes, I am a
working
nurse.
in the workplace, not a social worker.
Sorry.
Nurses are the heroes of us these
Our
days.
partners.
Very-
Yes.
I'd like to hear from some of you out, from the aspect of outside of the United States and some of the other countries, and what do you see as the issues you're going to face from the pandemic and the result of it? Can some of you want to chime in there? Anyone? Well, come on now. Somebody from another country want to speak up besides any thoughts
hello?
about that, huh?
Hello, this is Jacob
Yes, from
Yes.
Nigeria. Go ahead.
from Nigeria. The problem we are facing with regard to the pandemic in the third world countries is enormous. And most third world countries are poor, and most of us were working from home. And the welfare system is also inadequate. There are a lot of poor families, and even the workers themselves are very poor. And social workers are the ones who are supposed to attend to the needs of the workers in the workplace. So as it is, the social workers are overworked, and also the employer, they are not interested in the welfare of the people. And also, if I may also say, the technology to address the need of workers in terms of the social media or people working from home using the laptop, using the phone system, most of them don't have the Android to attend to their clients. So as it is, what do you think we can do to address this situation in Africa and most of the third world countries? Thank you.
All right, now, somebody else from some other country? Arat, are you there?
Hi, my name is Chief.
Go ahead. Hello?
Okay, I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa.
Okay,
And yeah, and as I've indicated there on the the issues that we are experiencing, especially now during lockdown, has been the lack of access to technology. We do have a lot of staff who has been working remotely from home, and even from a workplace point of view, it has also been difficult for us to reach out to those employees who are working remotely. So what we have tried to do, at least from the City of Cape Town point of view, is that we recorded some messages on a small video clip. And we made sure that those videos that we're talking about how to mitigate the risk of infection on COVID-19, how to stay healthy, how to access some of the services, we condensed it in a video clip. And we send it to supervisors and managers, and we asked them to send it to staff who do not have access to laptop and computers via like your WhatsApp facility, because they don't even have like a Facebook where they can access social media. So the only way that we were able to reach those employees who are working remotely was through a WhatsApp facility. So it's been very difficult reaching out to most of our employees during this time. And one last thing that I want to share is the issues around stigma. It's still a huge problem in Africa, other than still people believing that tigers don't cry. It's still seen as a sign of weakness. And when it's only in those dire situations wherein someone then reaches out to seek assistance. But on a normal day-to-day, people are very hesitant to reach out and use either social workers or EAP, because it's still seen by most as a sign of weakness. So there's still a long way to go in terms of trying to educate people in terms of the benefits of EAP and the benefits of seeking assistance, so that they're able to live a well-balanced life. Thank you.
Thank you. Amira? Reed? Amira? Can you hear me? I guess he's on. Oh,
Right.
are you there? Yes, how about you? What are you seeing now? My heavens. Go ahead.
Hello, you hear me?
Hello? Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, okay, I'm fine. Yes, I'm fine. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, dear, and thank you, Rory. I think many of our colleagues here, it's must to learn or to know about the IFSW, about the working or the occupation. So I have the comments in general. Maybe later, to hold the meeting, the other meetings, to talk about many things about the social workers. Here in Palestine, the situation it's not easy.
Let me make
social-
sure everybody, I just want to interrupt you for a minute. I want to make sure everybody understands that Reed is from Palestine. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Please again, I don't hear you. Please again.
What? Oh, go ahead.
Please again, I don't hear. Please.
Right. She said she was just making sure everyone knew you were from Palestine.
That's all.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll send you the message. So in general, here the social workers working with our family in this time. The situation here is very bad. It's very difficult for the social workers. طبعا really thanks for the IFSW all the time supporting our social workers here in Palestine and Gaza. This is in general. So maybe we need to talk about this later. About because it's we need a long time about this but that's it. I'm fine. Thank you.
What can a group like this do to be of assistance to you at this time, Reed? I mean, what can we possibly do, those of us in the workplace, and with a commitment? What do you have any suggestions? Did you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Later I suggested to hold the meeting to talk about specifically about what happened here or the challenges for the social worker here in Palestine. I think this is important. This is my suggestion.
Okay.
طبعا it's very important to Dr. Rory attend this meeting later, if he can.
So I can help answer the question.
Go ahead, Rory.
I can just help answer the question. I think the social workers in the Gaza area of Palestine are under immense pressure, as you know from watching the news every day. And I think any messages of support to them would be warmly welcomed. Just to know there's other people in the world out there that see incredible pain. The social workers, they themselves don't know whether they're going to, and their families are going to wake up the next day. So we've got colleagues out there really struggling. So I think any messages of support, and you can if you look on the IFSW Facebook page or the IFSW website, you'll find your way to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I just want to comment also on some other things. Pat talked about the good old days of social work, but she's a nurse. But I think we can give Pat, we can say Pat's got a really strong social work mentality, because it's about working with the supervisors, working with the managers, working with the culture of the organization, trying to shift the environmental context. And that's exactly what social work is. Very well articulated, Pat, thank you. And she said it's a struggle, because those were the old days. And now everything's so quick. You flick someone off to therapy or you ignore the problem. This is not just a problem in the workplace. This is a problem in social services globally. There's so much pressure on social services funding, and often we have managers that aren't from social work or aren't from nursing that don't appreciate that the more attention you give to the culture of the environment where the problems come from, the better the solutions will be. And it's not just about seeing the individual, it's about seeing the context of the individual. And so one of the things that we've had to do in social work is we've really had to do some research and get some evidence on the benefits of social work, the economic benefits. And we got this research in 2015. We didn't do the research. The research was done by an institution in the United States, which you will have heard of, called Princeton University, and an institution in Great Britain called Oxford University. And we all know these universities. We all know that they're world-leading class universities. The social policy departments had a link, and they wanted to know what was the economic contribution of social services and social work to society. They wanted to know what economic benefit doing the work that we all do brings to society, to the GDP, to the economy. And they found, by doing a global study, that the minimum return for every dollar that is spent on social services is a $3 return. So for every dollar the government or an employer spends on social services, there is a $3 return. Now, those of us in the field, it's really nice to hear this, because we so often get told we're an added expense, we're a luxury. But the research shows that when you employ, it's not specifically about the workplace this, but when you employ a social worker, crime rates go down, more children go to school, there's higher workplace productivity, less people need to go to hospital because they practice preventative medicine. So what we really need in this sector of the workplace is research, and I guess, Dale, you'd know whether it's there, others of you may know whether it's there, is when you have an effective EAP system, the kind that Pat described, does it reduce sickness? Does it increase productivity? Does it add to the longevity of workers staying in the role, therefore institutional knowledge and skills stay in the workplace? Now, I'm actually not aware of that research, but I think that's the kind of thing that will help Jacob in Nigeria in his argument, because I feel for you, Jacob. You're saying, you're kind of starting from kind of a level where people don't have a knowledge and a context for this. And what's the starting point? Because that's not just in the workplace, it's a starting point of building a culture of a welfare system. And I think that evidence will help us. So maybe this forum and this group can share that evidence if people are aware of it. And then Jacob can take it, Pat can take it, I can take it. Because what we learned with this research from Princeton and Oxford was that we could take that to governments, and they suddenly saw social work in a completely different way and social services in a completely different way. It adds to the economy. It doesn't draw away from it. And subsequently, more jobs have opened up for social workers and more social services have opened up as a consequence of that one piece of research. Yeah. I'll put the title of the research in the chat so that you can access that. But again, it's not specifically around workplace, but maybe you know of something.
Yeah, if I just could come in there, I'm from Ireland and I work for the, hi Patricia, I was looking at your name, I thought she has to have Irish roots.
Totally. Yes, thank you.
So I work for the Irish Defence Forces and two of my colleagues are on the call as well. So we're the only group, I think there's 9 of us in total in the military in Ireland that are occupational social workers. So we're the only group now in the country that have that title, occupational social worker. So I suppose some of the things that we did this year was with the Irish Association of Social Workers, we did a video, just kind of, I was featuring in the video, and it was about the role of the occupational social worker in the workplace, and the employer actually worked in partnership with us to produce the video. And one of our management team from the military is actually on the board of directors now of the Irish Association of Social Workers. So part of the message, I suppose, was that we're there to support the flight crew, the ground crew, the technical crew. Because I'm in the Air Corps, the aviation sector of the military. So that was really good. I suppose the other thing we did, myself and my principal social worker, we actually wrote an article. We're in the process of writing a chapter of a book. It's military social work around the globe. And we've kind of promoted the whole occupational social work piece in that article. So we're not calling ourselves military social workers. We're saying we're occupational social workers based in the military. So that's been really good. And then the other thing, like what Patricia was saying, I think that's really good point. We're struggling with that in Ireland as well. We're the only service now that is occupational social work. The employee assistance service is in Ireland, but it's different, and that's great. But we're getting this push now to refer people into these counselling services. So we have a counselling service called Inspire, and they don't know anything about military culture or any of the hierarchical nature of it, or any of the schemes that are available, or any of the pressures that people are under. And they get 6 counselling sessions, and that's it. And that seems to be the way EAP is going in the country. So I suppose it is a struggle for all of us, and I think it's about trying to promote. I know when I put up the video, I got a lot of feedback from people. I didn't know that part of social work existed. So I suppose it's my responsibility as well, I feel, as a social worker, to promote this. And what Dale is saying, let's start writing articles, let's start producing videos, let's start looking for research, let's resurrect this area of social work, because in Ireland, it was one of the earliest types of social work that originated in the country. We had this before we'd any other type of social work. So it's about trying to promote it again. And I think this group is going to be really fundamental in doing that. And I'm really grateful. It's brilliant to be part of it. So thanks, Dale, for organising it.
Dale, your microphone. Your microphone, Dale.
Thank you so much, Magella, because it was your group, the Irish group from the military, that was you were so supportive of me in the very beginning. I think you were one of the first people to join and say yes. So I mean, and you've really been very supportive. So thank you to all of you out there in Ireland. Tisif Mamaya, am I pronouncing you right? Are you there, Tisif? Because you made,
Chief Mamaya.
Yes, you wrote the impact. What he wrote is from South Africa, or from Africa. He wrote the impact of mental health in South Africa is huge. Stigma is still a big challenge. Access to social work services is restricted to poor communities. EAP access to technology makes accessibility a nightmare. Do you want to say anything or add anything more about that? There you go. Good to see you.
I'm the one who, yes, I'm the one who just shared the experience from
Okay,
South Africa.
good.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You want to say anything else? All right. Well, those were his comments.
Yes, I just shared as well the experience that we've been having in South Africa with regards to remote working and some of the strategies that we've been using to reach out to employees who don't have access to technology. Doing some small recordings and sending them through their phones, through the WhatsApp messages.
All right. Okay.
One of the wonderful learnings we got from your country in the pandemic, not for the rural situations that you're perhaps describing, but was the engagement of social workers with the engagement of community leaders to help change the patterns of behaviour to support communities for physical distancing. And social workers, particularly in Johannesburg area, taught the rest of us about how to work with community leaders right at the beginning of the pandemic, because there was a big distrust of governments, as there are in many countries. And but there's a trust of your local community leader. And so just to you in this meeting as a representative of South Africa, thank you.
Okay. Michelle Barrick, are you there? Michelle? Anyway, she wrote that, Michelle, by the way, is a professor at the School of Social Work in Southern California. Thank you for organizing this group and for the presentations. Dale and Rory would be happy to be involved. Okay, well, I will contact her. Well, as we're getting close to the end, I want to make sure that I have included as many as I can. I noticed that Janet Lamb, you have a fairly few words here that you wanted to say. Do you want to make a comment about them?
Hi, Dale. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for being here. It's quite an honor to work together today. I really was speaking more towards what Pat was talking about earlier of losing the consultant piece of EAPs, where we used to be being more of a fabric of the organization. We have a few that are still there, but I think to exercise that again and address the needs that we are seeing with the remote working, I think we have quite an opportunity here. And I think we've got to return to some of our social work roots and be a little bit more grassroots, if you will, in our efforts with our leaders and our stakeholders.
Good. Okay, well, Dennis has asked me to make an announcement that he noticed that there were several people on the group that we don't have your information. So if you have not necessarily corresponded directly with us, could you send us the information, and please, would you be sure to sign up as a friend of IFSW? It's the most reasonable organization I have ever joined, and really do appreciate that. As I think we're getting probably close to the end, I want to know, does anybody else have a final comment? I would like to say that I want to make sure, are you all comfortable with what I've laid out as future directions, that perhaps we would talk? Paul Maiden goes like this. That's good. Thanks, Paul. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Elaine's comment, about the, remote workers, and two of my children were working in offices with companies, and now they're both remote. And the offices are right down the street, but they're staying at home to work. And it's going to be interesting to see if EAPs start to drift more in the area in the region of telehealth, or if some employers say, well, we have a workforce, but they're not here, so why do we need an EAP?
Yeah, right. Okay, Paul. I mean, I'm glad that you said it, because I really think that, this is really an example that I see people are working more, from home, or out in the field. They're not going to an office, but I don't think that means that EAP is dead. I think it's just maybe just, maybe they need it even more when people are at home and there's all kinds of family issues surrounding them, which before that people went to work and it was a break, but now it's continuous. And it also really brings up, and the person from South Africa who spoke, and I'm sorry I didn't catch your name, but I mean, it brings up inequity issues. And there are inequity issues, even like in the United States, you know, real developed. And I live in New York City, one of the most developed places. I mean, there's a lot of inequity issues. And I think this is what, you know, in EAP we have to struggle, you know, we have to, you know, struggle with and deal with, especially as we move more into the use of technology and people working remotely.
Yeah, I just shared a PDF of an article published this week with Eric Parmenter and myself reviewing for the benefits industry, trends in technotherapy and workplace mental health and the whole landscape from a business managerial perspective of, well, how do I support people when they're not here, and what kinds of tools can I use, and what's good about them, what's bad about them. And so it's a very fair, balanced sort of critique of where we're at today and where EAP fits into this bigger sort of $2 billion techno trend that's happening.
Well, I think the biggest challenge to the field today, the whole mental health field, not just social work, but a real concern is this whole issue, for example, like with Lyra and Ginger and the group that, you know, that Prince Harry has lined up with, that what's happening is that people now, what they're pushing is you can do, you know, mental health with the smartphone, and you don't need all this other things with the professions. I'm shocked that the professions, and Rory, are you there? I hope you're here. That I'm shocked that the professions of social work, psychology, and psychiatry, as well as in the States, the National Institutes have not spoken up about this. I mean, treating addiction and abuse on a smartphone is not, and depression is just incredible. But that's another tremendous threat that's happening as far as affecting, and because of the technology now, it's such a gimmick that people are just hooking into it. And I'm upset by the companies. I mean, Apple, Amazon, they've all signed up there. So, I mean, that, in my opinion, is the biggest threat to the whole mental health field. That goes well beyond the EAP field. It goes well beyond the workplace. It's the whole ethics of the delivery with technology of what are we doing and what can we deliver through technology and what can't we deliver. So I think we have a lot to think about. Well, I think it's about time probably for us to have to close. And I just want to know if you all are okay or comfortable with what I said as far as future directions, that we might try to have Zooms maybe quarterly and share each other. You know, you all make presentations then. Rory really gave us, you know, a very high bar for the rest of us for the next, you know, the next group. But we really appreciate that, where you would come on and explain what you're doing. And we have I have your titles and stuff. So I'll try to pick a diverse group and certainly, you know, mix the countries that we're from. Does that sound all right? And then if you want to share anything with me, CNED goes like this. That makes me feel good to see that. So thank you. So let me know if that sounds all right. And if you want to continue, are we still okay?
I think it's really important to, and thank you, Dale, for organizing this. And Rory is terrific as always.
That's okay. And we have to thank Dennis, because he's the one when you sign up. I mean, we got poor Dennis. You know, we got all these lists here. Okay. Well, if that's okay, I want to wish you have a good summer and stay healthy. And thank you again. And I'll be in touch. Okay. Anything else?
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye. Bye.
Take
Bye.
care, Dale.
Bye, everybody. Nice meeting you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 And